And we will begin with the Electoral Commission's processes that has partly, you may say, led to someone losing their job because they stepped out while carrying COVID-19 and have lost their job as a result of that. They stepped out to inspect the process. Now, I'd like to start with Nana Akomea. First, straight to Carlos Ahenkorah, the former Deputy Trade Minister. What do you make of what he has suffered as a result of what he did? The question now being raised is that the president should not even have given him the opportunity to resign, and after the resignation, he should actually be facing prosecution. And the MPP as a party, according to Occupy Ghana, must take steps to revoke his candidature and find somebody else to do that job.
Thank you, Samson. Let me wish our listeners a good morning, rainy Saturday morning. I haven't been here in a while. It's good to take part in your discussions once again. Yes, Honorable Carlos Ahenkorah exercised a discretion wrongly, and he himself has admitted that he took a wrong decision under the circumstance, and he decided quite honorably that the best thing to do under the circumstance was to recuse himself from government. So he recognizes that he had been derelict in showing leadership at that point. That as a senior government employee, he needed to show leadership in enforcing the directive, not only from the president, but generally recognized directives to protect other people. And he was derelict in it. He has admitted it by offering his resignation. And so he has suffered the consequences. He has done the honorable thing. As for the president sacking him, I don't know what the legal ramifications are, but I would imagine that the employer would take that kind of step if it was appropriate, and if the employee refused to take that step himself or herself. I mean, something, if you had done something that brought the reputation of this institution, multimedia, into dispute, and you recognize that you've done something that brought this company into disrepute, and you thought the honorable thing to do to save the integrity of the company was to resign or recuse yourself from the company, and you took your resignation to Mr. Kwesi, who I assume is your employer, I can't imagine Mr. Kwesi saying to you that take your resignation away, I'm going to sack you. I would imagine that Mr. Kwesi would exercise or consider exercising that prerogative to sack you if you refuse to do what is honorable. But if you yourself recognized that you hadn't acted in the best interest of the company, and you went to your employer to say, I admit what I have done is wrong, and I want to resign to save the company from any repercussions, your employer would hardly tell you that something, well, this is your letter, I refuse to accept it, I'm rather going to sack you. So I think his resignation is timely. He has done the right thing, and once he's offered it timely, in a timeously, the president had no option but to accept it. And all of us must also accept it in good faith. And that's what is done. As for subsequent sanctions, whether it's prosecution or the party taking further actions, well, the steering committee of the party is the body to take any further action.
What would you advise them to do if this matter came before them?
I would think that once the man has admitted responsibility and has himself taken steps to sanction himself, there is no further need for any other sanctions.
Okay. Interesting. KWEKU, so he uses an example. I don't think, if you believe, that's the best example to use. In the first place, I am an independent contractor for this company. I am not an employee of Multimedia. Now, even if I were an employee of Multimedia, this is a private organization. This is not a public, institution. I am not the appointee of a president who is leading the charge and who has issued several, EIs by way of laws to seek to regulate the circumstance and prevent people from the risk of COVID-19. The president has given 13 different speeches stressing how he will not put anybody in harm's way. Should he be accepting a resignation from his minister who, knowing he carries the disease, still goes out to mingle with people in a crowd?
Well. See, the president, indeed, let me just make this point. If Carlos Ahenkorah had not resigned within the time frame he resigned, I think he would have been dismissed.
Okay.
He chose the more, let's say, a softer option, because he would have been dismissed.
Okay.
No matter about that. Everything was clear that he had been irresponsible, highly irresponsible. I wouldn't say Carlos, as others were saying. He goes with this, he rhymes, But he's resigned. The president has accepted it. There are calls for further sanctions. Prosecution, let's take the first one. Was it the president who triggered the prosecution of those pastors or anybody else who violated the EI and had been tried and sentenced?
It's law enforcement.
Exactly. Look, let's grow the institutions. If indeed the man has violated, and I think so, even though we have to be specific, that when it gets to the court scenario, you have to be very specific as to what offense he's committed and proceed on that in terms of the law.
Right.
I think something, he violated the EI. That's what I think. But if you're going to prosecute, you itemize what exactly does his conduct, what offense does it constitute, which section of the EI or whatever public health law and all those things. You specify. So you drive the prosecution on it. Otherwise, you could lose. You find him guilty in the court of public opinion easily. But in court of law, you have to be very, very specific relative to the legal regime that he might have violated. And I'm not good at those things. Yeah. But the point I'm making...
But you endorse what Occupy Ghana does. You say you are an occupier at heart.
Yes.
And people, good lawyers like Akomea is in Occupy Ghana.
Yes.
When they have said something, you know that they have a reason for saying it.
Yes, I agree.
And they have indicated a number of laws which have been breached.
Yes, that's why I'm saying that then the prosecutor agency, the investigative bodies must build a docket. Right. You know that. You investigate, you build a docket, and then you see what to do next. Perhaps, I don't know if this is the case, the Attorney General will have to give an advice or not. I'm not too sure about that. I didn't bother checking those things. But I'm saying that let the appropriate agencies trigger that option. You don't need the president to call the agencies and say, go prosecute him.
Don't we have precedents where the president, because of a high-profile matter, says, I have ordered the police to do ABC?
It's not investigation. We are talking prosecution. The president, like for instance, the Airbus thing, the president forwarded it to is it the Office of the Special Prosecutor?
That's
the
right.
allegations against 2 deputy chiefs of staff. He forwarded it to the CID. Okay, I am saying that he's done those things. What stops the police, or what stops the investigative agencies on their own motion responding to the Occupy Ghana statement? Because the Occupy Ghana has given them some raw material to proceed on. But that's okay.
In respect of analysis number 12, what was the president's instruction to the police?
He gave it to the CID to investigate the allegations, or if you like, the there is this thing, I've forgotten the exact word, but influence peddling,
right,
using his name by Mr. Nyantichi. He gave it to the police.
Investigate to what end?
The investigation body, based on your findings, will determine whether this is prosecutable or not. And that's why I brought in the Attorney General angle, that whether it would require an advice from the Attorney General. You may have to educate me on that aspect, because there are certain cases that don't go to the Attorney General, in my view. And that's a fact.
Misdemeanors don't go for the principle. When they are special, they can call for it.
So the point I'm making is that in principle, I am not against the call for prosecution. Indeed, it's an option that is available. And I would rather wish those appropriate agencies trigger it than asking the president, putting the burden of responsibility on the president to call for it. That's the extension I'm drawing. So in principle, I am not against that idea. But we should create and grow a culture of some of these institutions of state proceeding to do certain things without blinking an eye or looking over their shoulders. Now the other calls to that were made, like, somebody was resigned from parliament. I'm not sure the gentleman will do that. In any case, we are a few months to the elections. Resigning comes with some implications and complications in terms of the law. The time that you hold a by-election and all the rest, and whether even a by-election will be necessary, looking at the time and scope. And the new register being developed, compiled. So that option, really, I don't see it happening. And so I won't waste too much energy interrogating that. Then there's the other aspect that gets him off as a candidate for the party relative to the coming elections. I've heard that too. But you see, that's where the problem is. This is a democracy. Unfortunately, didn't bring the MPP constitution. I know that there's something about misconduct that can lead to sanctions. And whether this particular misconduct, because obviously it is a misconduct in my candid opinion, perhaps even more than that.
In fact, people who rain curses on people were suspended because they have misconducted themselves.
So this kind of misconduct, in terms of its weight, what sanction does it carry? Does it go to the extent of withdrawing him as a candidate? Would that be appropriate? Would that be democratic? In any case, it is a primary with a party contest that put him there as a candidate. You might have to apply that mechanism to remove him. I haven't checked. Unfortunately, Nana Akomea is here, so he might know as to whether this conduct will warrant a situation where the party and which organ of the party could take that decision that, look, we have withdrawn this gentleman as a candidate, meaning then they will have to hold new primaries or perhaps select somebody as the party constitution allows them to do. So that area too, issues of democratic competition and the rest, the principle also comes in. The will of the electorate within that party primary, the constituency, those who are entitled to vote.
If the party had the power to revoke his candidature, would you endorse that they do so?
I would, to be honest with you, I would prefer he's rejected at the polls, if either at the primary level or at the national level, rather than the party.
The primaries are over.
Yes, so that's what I'm saying, that option really is not practicable within the time constraints. That's my view.
Right. Now, Fifi Kwetey, what will be your take on this matter? And people are looking at it from the perspective of the effects of his conduct on the president as the man leading the charge.
Thank you very much, Samson. Now, I've think this whole thing has put the whole fight against COVID in rather very bad light. Because, I mean, let's say the government is leading this whole process. And in terms of the examples that ought to be given, the best people who should be able to set this example should be those who are in positions of responsibility. I want to say that the public outcry was massive. There was huge outrage. And I want to disagree a bit with my good friend Nana Akomea when he sought to create impression as though whatever Carlos did was simply some kind of epiphany that had come to him, a sudden illumination that has made him to take that decision. That's not the case at all. If you listen carefully to his initial reaction in that interview, you could see that somebody who is really believing that what he did was okay, as long as he kept the necessary physical distance. So you could see, as far as concerned, you're totally unconscious of the implications of what he had done. So I'm sure the initial backlash, I'm sure came to him as a surprise because he wasn't expecting the public to react that way. So whatever has happened really has happened because the public outcry and the outrage was massive. And of course, the government felt very embarrassed. And of course, pressure was brought to bear on him. And he has taken this decision. So please, let's not make it look as though he himself had really thought about it right from the beginning and thought that's the proper thing to do. Let's not do that. That would be trying to deceive the country. So he was forced to basically resign. And let's say that has been done. I want to say that given the whole difficulties we are having with COVID at the moment, and the fact that some people actually are doing time, okay, they've been punished, they are in jail today as a result of having infringed that law, I can understand why the public just feel this is not just enough. Because it's almost as if we are treating those who are highly placed in one way and allowing those who are not highly placed, I mean, to be treated differently. The business about what my brother Baako says that it is not a president's responsibility because there's law enforcement. That may be true, but you clearly know that, especially when it is we have had such publicity related to people who have been prosecuted, people who are today doing time in jail as a result of having infringed that law. I don't think the president should be waiting necessarily, I mean, for law enforcement people to go and do what they've got to do. He should be able to put his foot down and say, listen, we have to set example. And this is the highest level of example that can be set. I mean, I can give you, maybe it's not exactly the same kind of analogy, but a similar analogy, where, for example, at the very beginning of the PNC, a close relative of President Rawlings at the time was involved in an act. And in order to be able to show that example, that leadership at the highest level, I mean, then President Rawlings, I mean, okay, Flight Lieutenant Rawlings, who was then the chairman of the PNDC, ordered that the right laws be put in place and the person has to pay the appropriate penalty to the highest level. So I'm saying in terms of example, the president simply can't say that, no, law enforcement has to do what they got to do. Because you know that when it comes to issues that have to do with government and officials of government or people close to the ruling party, law enforcement people, by their very nature, are kind of hesitant. And why should they not be? They rightly have a reason to be afraid. Because if you don't know, you go and touch the sacred cow, you may be in trouble. Because once it comes to the people who are connected to the president, it's not exactly the same. You do recall, for example, at the very beginning of 2017, when the NPP came into office, some very flagrant, high-profile things that were done even at the Jubilee House, including assaulting of what you call police officers. I mean, what could the police do? Nothing. Why? Because you dare not touch anybody close to the ruling party, otherwise you may be in trouble. So if we just want to leave it for law enforcement to do what they got to do, I mean, they may be hesitant, and for right reason. Okay. Because they're afraid of victimization. So I'm saying it's not enough for the president to just say, yes, he has resigned and that's the end of the journey. I'm saying they should be able to still not order, but ask that something be done more than that.
Right. Okay. Now, Professor Kukua, sorry, beating a dead horse, what's the point? Hello, Professor Asare. Hello, Professor KWEKU Asare, are you there? Yes, I can see you.
Yeah, Samson.
Yeah, why beat a dead horse?
Well, no, I think everything that has been said is correct. I agree with both Nana, Akomea, and Fifi. But it seems to me what you are doing is really addressing symptoms. Because what happened was so obviously wrong, you have to ask, why was it done? And unless we understand the culture that emboldens people to do such things which are so obviously wrong, we'll be back to the same conversation next time with a different person. Is Carlos the only person who has engaged in this type of behavior? I don't know, but if I were to venture a guess, I would say he is the only one who has confessed to doing what he has done. So the culture here is one of win at all costs when it comes to politics. And that is undermining and destroying all of us, including all our institutions. People no longer make a distinction between good and bad, ethical and unethical, lawful and unlawful. When it comes to politics, it's all about what can I do to win? If it comes to primaries, what can I do to disqualify someone? If it comes to general elections, what can I do to disqualify someone? What can I do to get more votes that I'm entitled to? How can I register people who are underage? How can I register people who are not Ghanaians? How can I vouch for someone even though I have no basis of knowing that the person is a Ghanaian? So to me, there is a bigger problem than Carlos. And we have to do some retrospection and look at what is wrong with the society. Because too many things are going on when it comes to politics. That to me is just galling. And so that's the only thing that I can add.
And why do we,
whatever we say about Carlos,
why do we put,
that's not the real problem.
Okay, I get
deeper.
I get that. But why do we put this to politics? Is there not law enforcement in place? Why is it that during the NPP primaries, there is evidence of so many people who violated the protocols? The EI's requirement is that whilst political rallies are banned, political activities are not banned. But political activities must have not more than 100 people. There was overwhelming evidence of that breach. More than 100 people, you must wear your face mask or you suffer the pain for not wearing a face mask. We have seen the evidence of many people not wearing their face mask or face shield or face covering as the EI requires. So why is it that it comes to the president must do something when the law enforcers are there? Recently, they did their own soup, and they said they arrested as many as 40 people who were flouting the face mask, regulation. Why must this be down to politics?
Because, Samson, you have to be realistic. You have to understand the system that you live in. You have to understand that our institutions are very weak, and therefore, everyone looks up to the president. People understand that law enforcement itself is politicized. So when it comes to criminal prosecutions, for instance, when I was growing up, we only knew about Baako. Baako was not the Attorney General. He was the Director of Public Prosecutions. But he was revered, he was respected. Everyone knew that he was independent of the Attorney General and on his own. He could come after you if you engage in criminal behavior. Today, if you ask me who the Director of Public Prosecution is, I don't know. Why? Because I believe that we have so much tampered with and undermined our institutions that there's not a single person out there that you would ask, do you believe law enforcement is independent enough to carry out the prosecution of someone who is affiliated with government? The answer will be, are you kidding me? Resoundingly. So that's the problem. That is the elephant in the room that we must address.
Interesting.
That at some point in time, we have to say enough is enough. Let us develop independent institutions. And we are going to be talking about the Auditor General.
Okay.
So I don't want to say too much about that. But that is another independent institution that we must leave alone to do its work.
Okay, so
if we destroy them.
Okay, so hold your fire on that. Hold your fire on that. Let me bring in Dr. KWEKU, who is with the Electoral Commission. Doc, thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, my brother. My regards to your panelists and the Ghanaians as a whole.
Thank you very much for making time, sir. Now, has the EC taken the time and trouble to identify the places that Carlos at the time was carrying coronavirus and visited, at least for purposes of the isolation, for contact tracing and isolation of your staff who were at these centers?
Thank you very much. The officers on the field have been asked to let us know where the area that they're touched, and I know the COVID team is also doing those monitoring.
So at this time, you can't tell us for a fact that the people may be out of danger.
I'm not so clear about the question.
You can't tell us for a fact at this point that your staff who were at these centers that he visited whilst he was carrying COVID-19 have been attended to, if necessary.
My information is that I did not have direct contact with the officers there.
Okay.
He was rather interacting with the people who moved there. So I'm told that they didn't have direct contact with the researching teams.
All right.
So if anything at all, then it could be like a contact with an applicant, then applicant will get contact with our people. But there was no direct contact between him and our officials.
But that is not to say you are ruling out the possibility of contact tracing and testing your officers within those places.
That's what I'm saying, that we have asked the district officers there to help us identify the areas that he touched. And the national COVID team is also doing those monitoring. Okay. This one is more of the specialists there, because the Electoral Commission, we don't have the skill to do the contact tracing and the rest.
That's right.
So the COVID people are working on that.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll return to you on the other substantive matters as far as your role is concerned. Nana, I thought I saw you going through your constitution to respond to assist us with what KWEKU was asking. Otherwise, shall we move on to the exercise ongoing and the matters arising?
Well, thank you, Samson. My little point is that a call has been made for party to sanction Honorable Carlos Ahenkorah. A call has also been made for him to be punished and prosecuted. These are early days. I would imagine that the steering committee of the NPP would consider other options as the party's constitution so prescribes. If the conduct of Carlos falls within the breaches provided by the NPP constitution, I have no doubt that the steering committee will take a decision. The call for prosecution, there are agencies and institutions responsible for that. The call has been made. I am sure in the coming days, they would also examine that call, and if there's any merit in it, I am sure they will act up to their responsibility.
Okay.
The business about Carlos being forced, that Fifi Kwetey, I don't know where Fifi got that from. Carlos obviously didn't take into account the full ramifications of the action, But subsequently, he must have realized that his action was completely out of order, and he has taken the necessary step. To say that he didn't know what he was doing, and so he's been forced to resign without any evidence is quite unfair to the situation.
All right.
Yeah, you know, I was surprised, indeed, intrigued by an example Fifi gave. He went as far as the PNDC era. What an inappropriate recollection, analogy. I was surprised. I'm sure he was referring to one Adi, who was Mr. Rawlings's nephew or so, and who shot somebody. The public tribunal found him not guilty, no, on some technicalities, and Mr. Rawlings came back and said, no,
okay,
retry. No, please, it's very important. Retried the guy who was retried and dealt with. First of all, we're talking here of an unconstitutional environment. So even that recollection for me was inappropriate relative to this one. But I can give him the same, many more examples where Mr. Rawlings himself, within the same context of the PNDC, glossed over so many things. So it's completely inappropriate. And even come back to the constitutional era, things he presided over without doing anything. So I think he shouldn't have brought in that at all. But let me tell you something, and I see the drift. Look, there's no need for us to lose faith in this democratic system. If you've lived under a dictatorship before, you would not for a moment give up, fold your hands, or give up on this system. There are people who have stood up. Look, you remember the late Awuni, COP Awuni.
Yeah, I want to talk about.
And you remember the incident, it was also during a registration period. His confrontation with the regional minister, who I think was the MP or an ex-MP.
Yeah.
Also plotting.
Yes. We need to grow a critical mass of strong-willed people, backed by civil society. You don't give up. You don't say that, oh, it's the end of the road. You can't. Then we might as well go back to a dictatorship.
Okay. The examples of Awuni, I'm sure there are just a few of them within the system because of the acts of victimization and all sorts of things, unfair transfers. When the police talk to you, the way they get dealt with, because they have dealt with a political matter, they get moved, thrown away from Accra
so we give up.
Some
so
village.
Is the option zero option?
And then they probably lose their family, having to transfer them to all the way. Some of them may be on study in Accra, where they are doing maybe an evening program or a Saturday program, weekend program, and they get transferred all of a sudden and they lose that opportunity.
Samson, if some of us were prepared, we're not ready to put our necks on the line, we will not have this democracy. People died.
That's right. Okay. So
people died. Okay. People went to jail. People ran into exile.
Well, not too many people.
So those who talk and
not too many people are ready to make those sacrifices.
Yeah, then they better shut down.
Okay. All right. So let's now get into the EC's ongoing exercise. Dr. KWEKU, let's start with you. You issued a statement after the first day of the exercise to express satisfaction. The public was angry at you that it doesn't appear that you followed what was going on by the tone of the statement you issued.
Something, I'm not sure of the statement you are referring to, but in all our releases, we have been complaining about the refusal of the public to observe the social distancing. And we have come out with a lot of new steps and the rest to ensure people observe them. We have been saying that we are satisfied with the figures and the way the machines are working, but we have all been complaining about the refusal of Ghanaians to observe the social distancing.
Are you disturbed about what is going on at these registration centers because of COVID?
Come again.
How concerned are you about what you see about the complete lack of observance of the social distancing, the protocols, no physical distancing. There are people you see around the place, they are not wearing face masks or any covering, and at some places, almost like a stampede.
See, let us also be very careful we don't jam all of them together. There are a huge number of centers who are observing those protocols. So there are some few of them who are not, and let's talk about that. If you make a statement that they are completely out, then I would say that maybe those who are making those observations have not monitored enough centers. So some of the breaches are there, but it's not universal. And we are always coming out with different steps to attend to them. And if you wouldn't mind, I can take you through the steps that we are taking now.
So you want to talk about new steps, not the initial steps that you said people have to go through. Get to the center, you must wear a mask or a covering according to the law, and then there are Veronica buckets. You said you supply them. There are sanitizers and so on. What new beyond that?
I don't know whether you have been observing the system yourself. If you are maybe speaking from what people are saying, that's a different thing. But if you have gone there yourself, we realize that what we decided to provide, they are all there. But the challenges are that some places, they are not observing the social distancing, and some places too, before they go into the cordon of areas, the market areas, they put off their mask. And it's a universal thing that is happening in the whole country. And all of us should be concerned, not necessarily at the polling station. We should encourage people to observe the protocols because the disease is there. And as long as we are not asking people to observe them, they may not go to the resign center to misbehave, but whatever they are, it's a concern. So we should all ensure that we all contribute our quota to continue to educate Ghanaians for them to appreciate that the disease is real. So whatever they are, as the law is, before they get out of their houses, they should be in the mask. Before, whether they are going out or coming, they should be in the mask. And when they get into contact with people, they should observe the social distancing. And that is what should be observed. And we are trying our best to reinforce them.